A monumental decision by President Trump yesterday with worldwide repercussions. He decided to pull the U.S. out of the Iran nuclear deal. And joining me this morning is political science professor Liam Anderson from Wright State University with what exactly this means for the U.S. as we plan to move forward. So what do you think happens now?
Well, I think that's the critical question, is what happens next, because as it stands right now, the U.S. has withdrawn from the deal, but the deal is still there, because the deal is between Iran on the one hand and US, China, Russia, Britain, France, and the US on the other. So the deal between the other five and Iran is still holds.
Which is interesting, because I think you brought up a really good point when we were talking in the break, that deal is not void. It's not null and void as far as with the US pulling out.
Right. I mean, there was a raft of sanctions imposed on Iran. There were sanctions by the United States, unilateral sanctions, but there were also UN Security Council sanctions and European sanctions imposed by the EU. And it was the European sanctions that really hurt the Iranian economy and sent it into a tailspin, because it's Europe that buys Iranian oil. America doesn't buy Iranian oil. In fact, about half of Iranian oil is bought by Europeans. So if Europeans impose sanctions and don't buy Iranian oil, that's what really drove the Iranians to the table. Well, that deal's still in place, so these sanctions have not been reimposed on Iran yet. But a lot of this depends on what the intent is in the minds of the Trump administration as to what comes next. And that requires climbing inside the mind of Donald Trump, which, interesting place to be, but I don't have access to that. I mean, I can speculate if...
Right. But I mean, I guess you kind of said something. This brings us into a situation at this point. And President Barack Obama spoke yesterday about the U.S. pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal. He said, basically, we have two choices. You've got a nuclear Iran, or you've got war. Or we're going to go back, to war with them. Do you think that stands true? Does that hold true, that statement?
I think at the time the choices were, yes, if you believe Iran was on a path towards nuclear weapons and had the intent to acquire them, then either you cut some sort of deal with the Iranians to put a freeze on that, or else you have to accept that a nuclear Iran, or else you have to fight a war to stop them doing it. So I think, yes, the choices were really the deal or nuclear Iran or war at the time. As it stands right now, again, it depends really what the intent of the Trump administration is going forward.
And we just don't know what that is at this point.
Well, it could be entirely that President Trump wants to fulfill a pledge he made on the campaign trail, which was to pull the U.S. out of the deal. And that's as far as it goes. Or it could be that this is the first step on the march towards a war with Iran, which plenty of people in the Trump administration are in favor of. They want regime change.
If that happens, if we go to war with Iran, I mean, this is a big if, and this is not, nothing has been obviously set in stone. Where does that put us with our allies pulling out of this deal? I
don't think we will have very many allies going to war. I mean, militarily, that doesn't really matter, because, I mean, the Europeans, the British and the French have some military capability, but the U.S. can do this on its own. But politically, I think it matters to be seen to be going to war on your own, and that no ally wants to join you. I think that's a problem.
Interesting. Dr. Liam Anderson, thank you so much for coming in and talking.
Call me Liam.
I almost did. Oh, my goodness. Thank you for catching.
He's my brother.
Oh, my gosh. All right, our time right now, 7:37.